Vent Line. What's going on, everybody? Declan Goff here, taking you through another edition of Vikings Vent Line. Thank you to everyone who has liked, rated, subscribed Purple Daily. We do this show every Sunday during the Vikings season. We like to do it with Phil Mackey, Judd Zolgad, and myself, and we bring on Vikings fans to react, mostly complain, but react also from the Vikings game. But during the offseason, I still like to talk to Vikings fans, get their thoughts on the season, free agency, the draft, everything that's now kind of taken place, and of course, OTAs and minicamp and everything's still right around the corner. So football never sleeps, as we know. So I'm always interested to hear from Vikings fans. And if you'd like to get in on a future episode of Vikings Vent Line, shoot me an email. It's scrolling across the bottom of the screen right now for the YouTube audience. It's vikingsventline@gmail.com. Again, it's vikingsventline@gmail.com. I'd love to talk to you guys. I have a few other people that are in queue, but please shoot me a note anytime. Sometimes people drop out last minute or they're not able to do it. So if you'd like to get on an episode or if you'd like to be back on an episode, by all means, send me an email. It's vikingsventline@gmail.com. Of course, Purple Daily is sponsored by our friends at Surly Brewing. Go to the Surly Brew Hall. It's that weather is finally warmed up nice, and you can go get a Surly Supreme, enjoy a Surly Furious. A Warp Zone's a taproom exclusive. Shameless plug. That's my favorite beer to get when I'm there. Go check out Surly Brewing. They're a proud sponsor, a presenting sponsor here on Purple Daily and Vikings Vent Line. And a shout out to TCL. No matter what you watch, TCL has award-winning TVs for any budget, any space, all within stunning picture quality. Plus, TCL makes more than just TVs. They offer mobile products, audio devices, home appliance. Learn more at tcl.com. All right. My guys Rob and Grant are about to join me here in just a little bit. So far throughout this week on Purple Daily, we've been talking about breakout candidates. OTAs have been taking place. Judd Zolgad's going to be back at OTAs next week for more observations. So if you missed any of that, obviously just scroll through this YouTube channel, or if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or the Score North app, go back and check out any episodes you might have missed. But excited to get to Rob and Grant here to talk some Vikings and talk future of the Vikings and what they are expecting for this team this year. So let's waste no more time. Let's get Rob and Grant on Vikings Vent Line here. Rob, what's going on? Are you in Minnesota? Are you not in Minnesota? Where are you based at?
No, I'm from Connecticut.
Connecticut. Okay, and Grant, how about you?
I'm in Arizona, originally from Minnesota, but moved out to Arizona.
I've yet to have, I think, like a Vikings Vent Line show where it's exclusively Minnesotans. Everyone seems to be from all over the country and all over the world in that fact. So I love hearing how people became Vikings fans and where they're based. Rob, you've been just a suffering Vikings fan your entire life. How'd you become a Vikings fan?
Yeah, pretty much. Suffering since I was born. My dad, he liked Fran Tarkington a lot, so that's how he kind of brainwashed me into it.
Right. Grant, how about you? How'd you become a Vikings fan?
So I actually grew up in a household that hated the Vikings for some reason, even though we lived in Minnesota. I guess they're just the local team for me. Fell in love with the Vikings back in '98. I think I was 8 years old at that time, and just been a fan ever since.
Nice, man. Yeah, it's a torturous group, but at the same time, we all just want to see the Vikings win a Super Bowl before we all die. And I'm loving to hear from Vikings fans and hear how they became fans, and just maybe this is the year. We'll see what happens. Fellas, let's start with this first one here. I sent out some prep notes to you guys, and Judd and I were talking about this on 4-Question Friday of this week on Purple Daily. Breakout candidates for the Vikings. Now it's an offensive-minded coach in Kevin O'Connell, right? So I know most of that offense is still the same. Now it's going to be tweaked a little bit differently. So, Rob, I'll start with you. Give me a player that you think is going to have a career season for the Vikings. And to be honest, too, I can even put this on the defensive side of the ball if there's someone on defense you're looking at as well. Who is a breakout candidate for you for the Vikings this year?
Sure. So it's probably going to be a name nobody's going to think of, but it's Greg Joseph.
I like it.
Want to go through it? Justin Jefferson's already had a 1,600-yard season, 10 touchdowns. Dalvin Cook's had 1,500 rushing yards, 17 touchdowns. Got a slew of veteran. Pat Pete at 7 picks in one season. Kirk Cousins almost 5K passing yards. Their best years are kind of behind them. The guy that's going to have the most, I guess, relaxed time on the field is going to be Greg Joseph. There's going to be no Zimmer pressure with field goals. The offense is going to be better. I expect less 3-and-outs. I expect him to drive the ball down the field more often, be in positions to kick field goals, especially during the ends of halves, which never seem to go our way, or ends of quarters or ends of games themselves. I just expect him to be in a position to get more points more often, and I expect the Zimmer curse of kickers to end.
Dude, it's pretty funny that we've been so tortured with kickers, but at the same time, the head coach, the previous one, and Mike Zimmer definitely did not like them. Obviously, if his name was not Teddy Bridgewater, he did not like kickers, and he did not like quarterbacks. And no, it didn't matter who it was, it seemed. And I kind of like your philosophy here. If this offense is working right, and the defense is at least doing its job, then there's less pressure on the kicker to have to deliver big game-winning moments or big clutch kicks. And look, will he be asked to do that during the course of the season a few times? Of course he will. But maybe that pressure of him being, with Mike Zimmer being gone, should open things up. And I know they have I forget, I'm blanking on the guy they brought in to compete with him in training camp this year. But at the same time, I think it's still Greg Joseph's job. But I like it. A kicker. Let's get another Ryan Longwell in here. There's some consistency. We can all take a sigh of relief. I joked during the Cardinals game when Greg Joseph just pooched the one to the right that I was like, I don't think he's gonna make this kick. Let's get off that. Let's change that mindset of that. And I think Zimmer had a lot to deal with that. Grant, what about you, man? Who's a breakout candidate for the Vikings this year?
So I think just the obvious one, Justin Jefferson. I'm excited to see what he'll do in this new offense here. I mean, Cooper Kupp going off last year for 145 catches, 1,900 yards. I'm just excited to see what kind of plays will be in place for Justin Jefferson. I think he'll be right up close to that 2,000-yard mark, hopefully 130-plus catches on that. He'll definitely be utilized a lot. Another quick one, I guess, is Dalvin Cook in the passing game as well. I feel like he's going to be utilized a lot more. He hasn't topped 60 catches here yet. What's the most touchdowns he's had? I think is like 2 receiving. I think it's going to be a breakout year for him, just the different ways they can put him in the passing game as well.
Yeah, it seems like Dalvin is poised for this big year, right? Like they're lining him up at wide receiver. Look, Zimmer liked to give him the ball in general a lot, and he certainly he's had a lot of touches. He has a tendency to miss some games too. But, Kevin O'Connell likes to talk about that illusion of complexity. And if you're lining a running back up at wide receiver or in the slot or on the outside, I mean that's the definition of that exact topic that he's been talking about with his time with the Rams. And if Dalvin Cook, I think, who is poised to have a big receiving year. I mean, I think 500-some yards in 2019 was a career high for him. And it just seems like the Vikings have been behind the times when it comes to utilizing their running backs. I mean, they've used Dalvin Cook a lot. They've used Alex Madison. Even Kene Nwangwu, who hasn't been used a ton like the two in front of him. You'd obviously would like to see Dalvin Cook be used more in the passing game. I mean, for God's sakes, guys like Alvin Kamara were catching a lot of passes a few years ago, and you would just like to see the Vikings kind of get with the times, for God's sakes, and get Dalvin Cook more touches and get creative with it. You don't just have to hand the ball off first and second down, forces a third and long, and become very predictable on offense. So I like those two options. Greg Joseph as the kicker. Dalvin Cook, I think, still has even more to his game, which is crazy because he's been a very productive back, right? I mean, you could make a case he's maybe a top 5 running back in the NFL, but he still has a ceiling that I don't think, to your point, Grant, he has hit, and Kevin O'Connell is going to be tasked with unlocking that. So Greg Joseph, Dalvin Cook, I like both those options. We were talking about backup quarterbacks earlier this week because Kellen Mond apparently is going to get his fair shake as a backup this year to Kirk. And, I know Sean Mannion has also been the Kirk's backup the last few years. He's mostly been a clipboard holder. I know he had to come in during the game against the Packers last year when Kirk tested positive for COVID. But I'm curious if maybe even if it's not Kellen Mond or Sean Mannion, Rob, I'll start with you. Is there someone you're looking at that you'd like to see back up Kirk Cousins? Sure.
So I'd say I would want Kellen Mond to back up Kirk Cousins after the bye, though. So just want to make that distinction. Before the bye, if Kirk has to miss 1 or 2 games, for example, you don't want to start Kellen Mond week 1 against the Packers. That's probably too much to ask. Week 2, on the road, Monday night, primetime game against the Eagles, also too much to ask. I think after the bye, he'd probably be developed enough because I look at this as his rookie season anyway, since there was no development whatsoever last year, to put Kellen Mond in. If Kirk is going to be out the entire season, then start Kellen Mond every game, just see his upside. But Sean Mannion, I think, would be the guy to give you 1 or 2 games, if need be, when Kirk gets injured mid-game or Kirk can't make it for whatever reason, before that Week 7 bye. We have a lot of tough opponents, besides the Bears. You don't want to play Kellen Mond in a primetime game. You don't want to play him, in New Orleans if he has to. Sorry, not New Orleans. Against New Orleans in London if he has to play there. I think the schedule is probably better, and it just makes more sense if he were to back it up after the bye.
Yeah, I mean, obviously in a perfect world, right, your backup quarterback doesn't have to come into the game, but obviously we've seen Viking seasons go off the rails before, where Case Keenum stepped in and played pretty well. Even Gus Frerotte, in 2008 stepped in for T-Jack, played pretty well. you need at least a viable option as a backup quarterback. And look, Sean Mannion is a veteran. He's been there and done that. He loves Kirk, and he clearly likes this Vikings offense. And Kellen Mond is still this wild card. He's very raw, and clearly Kevin O'Connell and the coaching staff still want to be able to give him enough time and give him the space where he's not thrusted into something. To your point, yeah, I don't hate that idea that let him still learn the playbook, let him get his reps in training camp, and let them do their evaluations there to start. But then after the bye week, once he's kind of been able to be more familiar in year 1.5, basically, of his NFL career, does that open things up to him where maybe the coaching staff would trust him to back up Kirk if Kirk were to be injured or miss a game? That's a big one. Grant, what about you, man? Who should back up Kirk Cousins this year?
Yeah, I think if Mond looks good enough in mini camp OTAs here, get him to back him up as soon as possible. I think that's what he was drafted for. And just physically, I think he brings you the most upside too with his cannon of an arm and ability to run. So, yeah, if he's showing a lot of improvement, get him in there as soon as possible as the backup. But, yeah, Mannion, he seems like he knows the playbook. It just doesn't seem like there's much upside to him if Kirk Cousins did go down. So the sooner we can get Mond as the backup here, I think the better.
What are your guys' thoughts? Rob, I'll throw it back to you. What are your guys' thoughts potentially on bringing in a guy like Nick Foles? Are you just like kind of staying away from that? Do you even want to not crowd up the room anymore? Like if they were to sign Nick Foles, how would you feel about that?
Yeah, it wouldn't be a Super Bowl winning move in my opinion, right? If they sign Nick Foles, if they bring in somebody else, if Kirk Cousins goes down for this team, and whether you hate or love Kirk, we're probably not winning the Super Bowl this year, right? Or probably not making it too far in the playoffs if Kirk goes down for the entire season. Having a veteran backup like Nick Foles catch fire in the playoffs, because I want this team to win a Super Bowl. That's really all I care about, not just get to 10 wins, right? That I wouldn't be a fan of. I'd rather just start Kellen Mond, see what you got. If Kirk's out for the entire season, then start Kellen Mond every game because he needs the experience, he needs the development. If you just need him for 1 or 2 games, though, I'd still go with Mannion at the beginning of the season.
Grant, what do you think, man? Are you open to the idea of bringing a veteran like Nick Foles in, or would you rather just kind of roll with Mannion and Kellen Mond?
I agree. I think we just roll with Mond, see what you got here. I mean, you used the 3rd round pick on him. See what you got. I agree. I don't think that we're going to be competing for a Super Bowl here this year. I hope I'm wrong on that, but see what you got then.
Yeah, I would think even last year would have been maybe the better time to bring in someone like Nick Foles if he were a free agent, right? Like that would have made a little bit more sense, would have even eased it a little bit better on someone like Kellen Mond, who clearly was going to be a raw prospect, and with Foles being able to, who has been there and done that a few times. I know he obviously won a Super Bowl before, but still not necessarily a quarterback you want to be throwing in there a ton. But I feel better about that option if Kirk were to miss a game. So, yeah, I was just curious how everyone's kind of feeling about that backup position, because obviously your backup, yeah, you don't ever want him to play. But then if Kirk does miss games or gets hurt, and he's obviously been an Iron Man for the majority of his career, well, where do you go? Where do you kind of go? So it is an interesting conundrum they'll have to face this year if Kirk Cousins were to miss any time. What are your guys' expectations for the Vikings? I've been asking everyone this that's come on Vikings Vent Line over the last few months. I think a lot of people have said yes, kind of like you guys said earlier. They're not Super Bowl contenders. They're maybe a fringe playoff team. So Rob, we'll start with you. What are your expectations for the Vikings this year?
Sure. It's non-traditional. I'm not going to have a set win total or playoffs. If they don't win a Super Bowl, I'd rather them go 0-16 and get the 1st round draft pick, right? I've seen enough playoff exits. I've seen enough first round, something happened in the 4th quarter and we lost by a field goal. What I expect for them is for Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell to get better, to get experience, right? Mm-hmm. Get play time, time as a head coach, just experience, when to call timeouts, clock management, all that stuff, all the nuances of football that go into it for him as a coach to develop. I don't think we've talked about that. We've talked about players, but this is his first time calling plays, first time as a head coach. I want him to get the experience under his belt, get better at play call tendencies, be more involved in the defensive side of things as the season goes by. I also want this team to have fun. 2017, they were playing Duck, Duck, Grey Goose in the end zone. With Mike Zimmer, it was a little bit of a different vibe holistically, right? I want them to enjoy playing football. I want them to develop their young players that they had from last year's class, develop what they have and build towards the future. I personally don't believe this team is good enough to win a Super Bowl. I believe either next year or the years after that, they're more in contention. So I want to see them stop making moves like getting Chris Herndon for a 4th-round pick, and stop mortgaging your future for like stuff that aren't Super Bowl winning moves.
I like the have fun part, man. Like, you're right. That 2017, that playing duck duck goose in the end zone, it just felt like by the end of the Zimmer tenure, it was just so cantankerous, and that holistic view, to your point, it just, there wasn't that same fun vibe. And with this offense of Kevin O'Connell being the offensive guru, and I know he talked about, I think this at the podium at OTAs, that, hey, when you're a head coach, like, you're not just a coordinator anymore, like, you're in charge of everything. You have to handle so many things that maybe you even weren't prepared for, even when you sign up for the job. And how does that adversity handle? To your point of calling timeouts, to the point of learning game flow, to the point of learning how just to build out a roster is incredibly important for them. So yes, just kind of finding themselves and having fun. That's the most part I'm curious on. I would like to see this offense just at least crack that top 10 ceiling for the first time in a long time. And I know that's a tall task for a rookie head coach, but if Kevin O'Connell is who he is, well, then that should be a lot of fun to watch with that offense putting up a lot of fireworks. Grant, what about you, man? What's your expectations for the Vikings this year?
I'm expecting close to another 500 record. And I guess just me, and I know you guys have talked about on the show quite a bit here, I'm just kind of confused what our off-season plan is. I mean, they come out talking that they're going to be competitive here right away, which some of the off-season moves make sense of that, like re-signing Kirk Cousins, I think gives you the best opportunity to win right now, bringing in Zadarius Smith. But then some of these other moves during the draft, trading back to get more picks and value and stuff like that, to me, it just doesn't make sense. I personally don't think you can have a competitive rebuild. I feel like that if you try that, it just gets us where we've been for the past couple of years, middling that 500 record. So I guess I'm just kind of confused right now by the direction of the team. I don't think that I think the new coach and GM are going to do an absolute great job here in the future, but I don't think it's really fair to put all this pressure on them year one and think they're going to take us to 11, 12 wins. I hope I'm wrong on that, but I don't see that happening. And
yeah, it feels like a slow build, right? Like you don't want to even get those expectations way too in front of your skis a little bit, and then you get let down in year one. And yeah, this is going to take a little bit. Like the Vikings aren't a disaster. They don't look like the Jets or the Lions or teams that have kind of been perennially towards the bottom of the NFL for years and years and years. But at the same time, they don't have enough talent to really be considered legitimate Super Bowl candidates. And that's going to take time through the draft. That's going to take time with your coaching staff figuring things out, and your GM, yes, building out a good roster and having good draft strategy and whatnot. What did you guys think of the draft? Rob, did you kind of like what the Vikings were able to do in the draft this year?
Yeah, I was actually kind of upset that they won the game last year against the Bears, another meaningless, no playoff game with nothing on the line. They start Kirk Cousins. They don't even see what they have with Kellen Mond. They don't even get Justin Jefferson his rookie record or his record to beat Randy Moss. Winning was probably the worst thing for this franchise in the long term. When you won that Bears game, the last game of the season, you would have gone up 3 draft picks without doing anything. You could have taken Garrett Wilson, or you could have traded back with Detroit and I believe gotten their first pick next year, which is going to be a great quarterback draft. So I don't like the value that they got from the first Detroit trade. I like the value and I like the trading strategy from the Green Bay trade. And I would say I was just a little odd. And I thought for the offensive lineman from LSU that they could have probably waited another round. It seems like that was a consensus before picking him. So, time will tell. You never know with drafts, though.
Yeah, you got to let it play out a little bit, right? Lewis Cine, I think, should be a stud. I agree. I didn't love the value for it. I think Cine's going to be a nice player for him, but you would have liked to see the Vikings get a little bit more. And yeah, to your point about that Bears game, I mean, they were down early, right? Like they were down at halftime, I think, even, and it was that couple more draft slots up. That's a big deal to the Vikings. So I think in general, time will tell on the draft. But hopefully Kwesi doesn't get into this habit of being like classic dude that's always trading back. If you get the good offer, I get it, but hopefully that is not something that you do. You take the best player available. I'm kind of becoming more of a BPA guy myself. So, Grant, what about you, man? Did you kind of like what the Vikings were able to do at the draft this year?
Yeah, I guess on the picks, like you guys said, time will tell on that. I don't feel like you can judge the picks by now, but I feel like they definitely did not get enough value for trading back from 12 to 32. I mean, at least try to keep your second round pick at the very least on that. And just looking at other first round picks from the previous years that weren't quarterbacks, like the Saints Packers trade from back in 2018, I think it was. I mean, for the Saints moving up to number 14, I believe it was, to take Davenport, the defensive end. They got a first-round pick out of it, the fifth-round pick. I just feel like we were nowhere near close to that value, and I feel like the front office just had set in their mind that they're going to trade back no matter what. Maybe jump the gun for not as much value as they could have gotten. So
nice, yeah. You definitely don't want to get too cute at the draft, and you hopefully too don't want to be in Kwesi's position where you're getting fleeced and people are taking advantage of you at the draft as well. And I think he probably learned some things at the draft that maybe he wouldn't do in the next year, right? Like, I think that's really important. That's kind of a learning lesson as it is. So, in general, excited to let that class play out. Guys, before I go here, any last take? Anyone you want to shout out here before we wrap? Rob, got anyone you got to shout out?
Sure, yeah. Last take is, when you're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, start your other guys, your developmental guys. There's no need to have the safety, I think, Xavier Woods out there when you're just going to release him the next year. Start combining him, right? Yeah. And just want to shout out my buddy Vin. We've been a Vikings fan, since middle school together. So, yeah.
Best friends in misery, basically, right? Like, best friends.
Absolutely, yeah.
Getting upset over the Vikings. I love that. I got way too many of those. Grant, how about you, dude? Anyone you want to shout out or last take you want to make?
I agree with that last take. Yeah, just let the guys see what they can do. Unless someone has a bonus or something they need to hit, let the guys see what they can do. Quick shout out to my fiance, Katie. Thanks for putting up.
Oh, did we lose Grant? We lost Grant's audio there. We heard you shout out your fiance. At least we were able to hear you get that one in, and it's actually hilarious because I always find it amazing that so many people shout out their wives and girlfriends on this show. So
sorry about that. I think
now you're back. I got you. Oh man, Grant, poor Grant. This is Kirk. This is the Vikings defense. The last 2 minutes here, just a little bit of a meltdown.
I apologize about that, guys.
No biggie, dude. You shout out your fiance. Appreciated that note. And for Rob and Grant, Declan Goff here, wrapping up on Vikings Vent Line. If you'd like to get in on a future episode of the Vent Line, shoot me an email. It's vikingsventline@gmail.com. Hopefully the Vikings defense is able to stop being a sieve in the last 2 minutes. Hopefully this Vikings offense takes that next step with Kevin O'Connell and company. We'll be back on Monday, Mackie, Judd, and myself at full strength. This has been Vikings Vent Line. Hit that subscribe button for daily Minnesota Vikings entertainment.